Good morning guys, and welcome back to another Nat 4 Island Living Arts and Craft edition. It's been a while since I've played with any paint, and so today I'm going to show you guys how I went about remodeling this piece of furniture that I had hanging around the house. This desk, which is pretty old, but instead of throwing it out, I thought, why don't I repaint it and continue to use it, just give it a facelift. And luckily for me, I was able to find a half tin of paint, which is about a half gallon of paint, in my garage, and I thought it would work perfectly on this piece. So that is what I'm going to do and show you how you guys can do the same. Just give a facelift to any old or drab piece of furniture that you have hanging around but you do not want to get rid of. So the technique that I'm going to employ will help you to turn any old or just lifeless piece of furniture into something new and refreshing in your living space by simply adding a coat of color. So whether you want to give it a pop of red or blue or green, this technique will help you to actually give life to any drab piece of furniture that is hanging around your house. Also, what you will notice is that even though my paint remodel is very simple, I have employed a slightly different technique. So I'm not just going to be painting over the entire piece in just one color. I am using an acrylic pour technique, which I taught and showed in some of my previous videos, to do the drawers of this desk. I'm using this technique because I think it adds even more color and excitement to the piece, as well as more uniqueness and individuality. So this is one way to even take your creativity with your furniture to a new level. And now that I am totally excited and ready to have fun, to get my hands messy with some paint and to really just see where this project can take us to in terms of pops of colors and creativity, let us get started. But before we can add one drop of paint to this furniture, the first thing we have to do is to clean and prepare our area. So for each piece of furniture that I have here, I'm going to be using a sandpaper with a grit of 80 to sand each piece down. And the idea here is not to remove all of the stain or the varnish that is already on the furniture, but rather to mar the area so that when I am ready to apply my paint coats, the paint will have something to stick onto, to have some grit. And guys, while I am using an electric sander because I'm doing many pieces and I want the work to go relatively fast, you can also do the same thing, the sanding, using your hand. If you're doing smaller pieces or whatever sander you have, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure that for this first sanding, the paper grit is 80. And now that all my pieces are sanded, it is time for me to move on to the second stage in this preparation process, which is to wipe down and clean each piece. Make sure that it is free of all dust and debris. And this stage is probably one of the most important stages in the whole process, because if we have dust or dog hair or any other small piece of dirt that lodges onto your furniture pieces, it is going to show up in the end product after you've painted your furniture. So make sure to remove all dirt, debris, dust, dog hair, etc. And now that all my furniture pieces are clean, I'm going to focus on the doors, so doing the acrylic pour on the drawers, before I paint the rest of the furniture. So I'm going to do the drawers before I do the rest. In my previous acrylic pour projects, you saw me priming the canvas, putting a coat of paint that would make everything easier for the rest of paint to stick to. And it's the same process here. Even though I'm working with wood, I'm going to go in with a primer and prime the drawers so that when I'm ready to pour on the acrylic paint, it will flow easily and smoothly. And this is where the fun factor turns all the way up. You can choose whatever colors you want, either complement or contrast the main frame of your furniture. So for example, if you are working on a piece like mine, you will probably want to choose colors for the drawers that either blend in or stick out from the rest of the frame of the furniture. If you are doing a tabletop, you might decide, hey, the edges or the rims of the tabletop must have a different color, to set it apart from the rest of your table. If you had chairs, you could do this with the back of your chairs, to give it a very unique character and a statement piece that whenever somebody walks into your house, they're sure, wow, this was made with time, with love, with creativity. And so you choose your colors. I'm going to be putting together just a few blends of colors that I like. So I'm using mostly some metallic and high gloss colors here and pouring them over the drawers. And then I'm going to swirl using the same technique that I used in my previous videos as I was doing those acrylic pours. And then I'm going to put it to dry and see just how these drawers will come out. As I wait for the drawers to dry, I'm going to go ahead now and finish priming the rest of my furniture. So I'm going to do the other parts of the frame that I had already sanded, but now needs to be primed. The drawers are now dry, and I'm going to put on this protective layer of glaze paint, and this is basically to just prevent the acrylic paint from stripping or fading too early. So this will keep it in its true color for a longer time. If I hadn't protected it, it would be easier to strip and to fade, but this paint helps with that. And this is quite exciting, guys. I have put in the drawers to see what they would look like. Let us say if my main color was white, this is how they would look. I think they're quite beautiful. I'm not going to leave my main frame white, but if it were white or to remain white, I think these drawers would fit in perfectly with a white background. The primer that I coated the rest of my main frame furniture with is now dry. And so the next stage in the process is to sand down these pieces. I need to remove the sandpaper that was a grit of 80 and replace it with sandpaper grit 220. And I'm going to use this sandpaper to sand down these pieces. The aim here is to remove any areas where the paint might have dripped or bubbled or formed any puddle on my piece, and also to remove any such small items like dust or dog hairs which have been painted into the furniture while I was applying the primer. And so I'm going to make this as smooth as possible using this 220 grit sandpaper. Once I'm finished sanding, the next stage is to use a piece of tack cloth to remove the dust or any debris from the items before I put on any further coatings of paint. And now for the first application of my true color, and I'm using this gorgeous royal blue. This stage I used a smooth nap roller for my first coating of paint. And so I'm finished with one piece, and I'm going to get started now to put on the first layer on my second piece, my upper piece of my desk. As for the paint, I'm using a semi-gloss latex paint to paint the pieces, and that's because I believe that the durability on wood is much better than other paints. So this is what I've chosen, and as I said, it was some leftover paint that I found in my garage, but I do in fact like this blue color, so I think it will work perfectly for the purpose that I have in mind for it. And once this first coat of my true color is properly dry, I'm going to go back in again with my sander using the sandpaper grit 220, and I'm going to create a smooth surface, again trying to get rid of any areas where the paint might have bubbled or just settled in an uneven way, and to just smooth out the whole surface before I put on a second coat. So I'm going to sand this and make it as smooth as possible. Following each sanding, I'm going to go back in there again with my tack cloth to remove all dust, debris, dirt, dog hair, and just to make sure that the area is absolutely clean before I put on another layer of this true color. It is advisable that you use at least 2 to 3 coats to paint your furniture, and this is just to ensure that all the surface is properly covered and that your true color actually pops right through. For this second layer, the second coating, I am going to be using a high density foam roller, and it is small. That will allow me to get into all the corners and crevices to make sure that the paint is covering the entire surface of my furniture. After waiting for my piece to dry, completely dry, I recognize that 2 coatings will be sufficient for me for these pieces, and so I won't be putting on a third coat. But if after painting yours twice, you find out that you need to do a third coating. Remember to just go in, sand again with that 220 grit, and clean with a top cloth before you put on your third and final coat. Now that my final coat is on and I'm coming to the end of this project, I'm going to use this glaze to spray over and to coat the finished product, and the glaze will give it a little extra shine, but more importantly it will protect it so that this piece will last for a longer time. It won't strip as easily. If water falls on it, it will not soak through and damage the wood underneath. And so this is going to keep it protected for a longer time, and it's also going to cause this color, this pop of blue, to really shine through for a much longer time. So always remember that after you've put on your final coat, to just go over it with a glaze to protect the work and your hard work that you've just done. There's one other tip that I will leave before I go. While you're handling your furniture, the paint might be dry, but it is not cured. And so it is still early days yet for you to try to wash it or to clean it by scrubbing too hard on the surface. So it will be dry to the touch, but the paint is not yet cured. So you want to wait for at least a couple weeks before you start scrubbing down your furniture or applying any harsh cleaners to it, so that you do not damage the piece and you preserve the color for as long as possible. And that's it, guys. Another easy peasy project from Nat 4 Island Living Arts and Craft. Something that was taken from drab to fab. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. And if you try this technique at home, let me know about it. Comment down below and share your pictures with me as well. Continue to have fun, allow your creativity to just grow and explode. And until next time, walk good.